Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is back. And, of course, it's another Football at 4. Got the owners' meetings going on, Moshe. So a lot of stuff happening there, a lot of things that the guys are talking about. Jeffrey Lurie, the owner, speaking this week. We don't hear Jeffrey Lurie speak all that much, but Moshe, I wanted to kind of reflect that the importance of Jeffrey Lurie to this organization and to the success that they've had. And Jeffrey's 73 years old. You wonder how much longer he will be the head guy making all the big decisions for this team. But I think, in terms of ownership, I was thinking about this as he was talking yesterday and watching him sit there and at the owners' meeting. I'm thinking, man, are the Eagles fans lucky that this guy bought the team, the run that he has given them. And I don't know that we understand the importance of the owner to a team's success.
Yes, you're right. I feel like people don't understand. And by the way, I have a great Jeffrey Lurie story from that press conference I want to get to with you. But I think people don't recognize the importance of ownership until teams are really bad. And and not just bad, but bad throughout multiple coaches, multiple GMs. Take a franchise like the Jets, right? Where you realize, man, there's just a series of incompetent people constantly trying to run this organization. And why is that? Well, because, they're not well run from the top. And, there are some Philadelphia teams before Jeffrey Lurie. Obviously, ownership with the Eagles was not very good, and people came to see that. And I think that part of not understanding why Jeffrey Lurie is such a good owner is because it's very difficult to understand one of the things that he does that makes him a great owner, which is cash over cap, which we all talk about on this station a lot, but I still think is very hard for people to understand. On Inside the Birds later this week, we're going to have Samir Suleiman. He used to be the cap guy for the Carolina Panthers, and he's going to give us an education on what cash versus cap means. So if you're one of our great Patreon members, and you watch the video, you'll get a pretty good understanding of it. That's patreon.com/InsideTheBirds to sign up. But it's still a really difficult concept. I think when you just boil it down and say, hey, the guy spends more money up front than almost pretty much every other owner in the league over the last decade, I think he leads the way. Hopefully people understand that that's not easy to do, and that's a decision, Mike, on his part. Not everybody does that. So I think that that's part of also what makes him a good owner, and his steadfast approach to wanting to put the best product and the best people in charge of his product in his front office and on his staff.
Yeah, so many times you look at the moves that the Eagles are able to make, and Howie Roseman. We always just kind of give him the credit. It's Howie season, but he can't do some of the things he wants to do. We talked about a while back, like. How come Howie Roseman has never thought about leaving, or another organization hasn't tried to pluck him away? And we indicated remember there were some rumors about the Jets. Like, I don't know how real they were, but I said, does Roseman look at the Jets as a challenge? Like, as a guy who's a competitor, does he say, that's a challenge that I want to undertake? But he also knows that if he goes to the Jets, the challenge might not be able to be executed because he can't go to Woody Johnson and ask for things the way he could go to Jeffrey Lurie and ask for things and get them approved.
Right. And I think Howie's also reached he's GM'd here long enough to know that even if you have an abundance of resources, even if you have a great owner, it's a freaking challenge to do the job every single day in this market, because no matter what you do, you're only as good as your last game, right? And so it's always going to be a challenge. When they collapsed at the end of 2023, Howie didn't get the full crux of the bird because they were coming off the Super Bowl the year before. But there's always that, Howie made bad moves, or, questioning some of the things that Howie does. And he's dealt with that a lot earlier in his career, some of it deserved, obviously. But it's a challenge no matter what. So why take the challenge somewhere else where you have forces working against you when it's challenging enough to do the job here, but at least you have forces that are in your favor?
Yeah, one thing, and Jeffrey Lurie talked about it, I want to play the bite for our listeners and you, Moshe. He talked about the Eagles' cash over cap strategy and this whole notion that we've talked a lot about and why it's made them successful. Here's Jeffrey Lurie.
Yeah, our cash over cap has been high, and it's continuing that way. I only know one way, so, there's no implications of that at the moment. And all these decisions are strictly how to win big, how to replace players that you're going to have to sign players that are excellent young players in their prime. And so that's, if you want to win big, you better plan ahead.
Interesting to hear that from because we don't look at Jeffrey Lurie as like a gambler, right? We don't look at him as like this guy who's just like, spend it to make it. Like he doesn't come off that way, right?
No, he doesn't, but obviously his actions reflect that way, and they've been that way for like I said, a long time. And you can compare that to some other owners who are known for being either good owners or shrewd owners, but Jerry Jones is almost the opposite. This guy waits until the very last minute, and then he has to pay the most premium price for every single good player that he has, whereas the Eagles are able to get many of their good players under team-friendly deals without ripping off the player, by the way, just because he's able to put the cash up front that will allow the flexibility then to then be more maneuverable with how they do their bookkeeping. By the way, I don't know if you caught the whole press conference, but somebody asked him along those lines, Mike. I don't know who the reporter was, but it was such a gutsy question. They asked him about selling off the 10% stake or whatever it was to some other owners, and what he's doing with that money. Can you imagine asking, hey, what are you doing with that money that you just sold? Like it's anybody's business.
Did he answer it?
He did. He gave kind of a funny answer, but that was more along the lines of he was happy to have owners who shared the same opinion of him. Well, the first thing he said was, well, I'm going to buy more cornflakes and Cheerios. So I think he was trying to give a funny answer to a question that was highly, I don't know if you'd call it inappropriate, or very awkward, asking an owner what he's doing with money from a sale from a team.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, buddy, tell me how you spent your paycheck last, or what was the last home game revenue? How did you spend that money? He admitted that the Eagles didn't plan ahead as much after the first Super Bowl win. I thought that you learn from that first Super Bowl win and you take it all in, and then you kind of go on from there, and then they get back to the Super Bowl and lose, but. Him kind of saying they didn't plan ahead as much after the win, because this is where they got a little nostalgic. They signed some guys, and Howie kind of admitted that as well, that maybe we did some things that we didn't think that we normally wouldn't do. Like they almost let that Super Bowl get to them a little bit.
Yeah, and if you think about that Super Bowl season, they gave 2 contract extensions in the middle of the season, I believe. One to Alshon Jeffrey, who had originally signed on a 1-year deal. And I believe Tim Jernigan got the other one in November or December. And what happened? Well, Alshon's injury history caught up with him. Tim Jernigan wound up having some weird off-season incident, right, where he got really hurt, and then they had to redo his deal because of the liability, I guess, involved, or where he did something that was in violation of the contract, right? So, and then, like you said, after the season, they made some moves and probably – I think Howie said he felt he got overly sentimental with guys that maybe he didn't need to be. But they learned that by 2023, they had a bunch of guys on 1-year deals. They went to the Super Bowl. They didn't give anybody an in-season an extension that year, and 2022. And then this past year, look at all the guys that they had who could have been extended in the middle of the season, who not only didn't get extensions, but then wound up walking, and that's going to help the Eagles in the comp pick formula. So, yeah, they've changed their approach since that first Super Bowl.
Yeah, how about the whole run-pass question? Somebody asked him, hit him with, are you still hell-bent on, this big play passing offense? Because there had been reports, I guess, after that Green Bay game, there was some, why'd we run the ball so much, that Jeffrey Lurie wants a passing offense.
Yeah, he wants an explosive offense, and usually you equate an explosive offense with a passing offense. But at the same time, Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman have both said many, many times that they always want – one of the reasons that they loved Andy Reid and hired him when nobody else interviewed him was because they believe in people who are ahead of the curve, who see the next thing coming down the lane before others. And obviously we're in an era now where a lot of defenses are trying to limit those big explosive passive plays. They're playing two high safety shell type defenses, the quarters format, a lot of what Vic Fangio does. They're not blitzing as much. And because of that, you've started to see a little bit. Now, I don't think we've swung the pendulum totally the other way, but certainly the running back has become a little bit more used of weapon, right, for teams. You have Barkley, you have Josh Jacobs, you have the kid in Atlanta, Robinson, right? And you've got Derrick Henry, who still continues to be. And I think that you'll probably see some more teams lean on either running backs or running games as more defenses try to play more two high structures.
What is your funny Jeffrey Lurie story?
And I wonder if I'm the only one that just hit this because maybe I think weirdly or something. But in his opening statement, Mike, did you hear him thank dogs for being part of their Super Bowl run?
I'm looking.
Hungry dogs run faster or dog mentality. He thanked dogs.
I did not. I'm reading through the transcript. Oh, there it is right there. I mean, it's transportation. Dogs involved in the whole organization.
Right. So he was going through, and he's making a valid point. It takes more than just the quarterback and the head coach and the talent, right? He said, look, it's an organizational thing. It's your business people. It's your training staff people. It's your equipment people. It's your transportation people. And then he threw dogs in there, which I assume he's talking about like emotional support animals that they have or maybe security dogs. So I get that, but who thinks to include dogs among the people that you're thanking for your Super Bowl run?
I'll tell you,
who thinks that?
He's definitely an interesting guy. I feel like for the success the Eagles have had in the 2 Super Bowls and then some other runs, back in the Reed era and then now, I feel like he's not as beloved as the owner as you would think the owner would be. Am I wrong about that? Do you feel like differently about that?
Well, I think because he's not in front of the cameras a whole lot, so there's not a lot of opportunities to give him that love. He really only talks owners meeting, maybe one press, probably 2 or 3 times a year does he speak. Whereas, John Middleton, I think, is a little bit. He's beloved, right? Because he wants to win. He always talks about it.
He's out there throwing the balls after the games.
Yeah. I know people who have said they've gone to Phillies games and maybe had the nice club seats, and he was there and he schmoozed with them and things like that. That's not the vibe that you get with Jeffrey. I just think I think if you did like a Twitter poll, do you love Jeffrey Lurie? It would be like overwhelmingly yes, right? Yeah. But I just don't think that he connects with the people the same way all the time, the way maybe a John Middleton does, or the old who owned the Sixers that everybody loved, Croce. Well, he wasn't the owner, right?
Managing partner or somewhere in there.
Right. But he was out there, and he was an excitable guy, and he was always in front of the camera.
Geoff Mosher, a couple more real quick with Moshe. Lurie was asked about the extension for Sirianni and Roseman, and he says, "Yeah, we don't talk about that publicly." But did you get the indication that Nick is going to get, this 5-year extension? I mean, something to that effect?
I got the sense that he's going to be well rewarded, yes, for his 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years and a Super Bowl win. I did get that sense.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to say. When they hired this guy, nobody knew who he was. He gets him to a Super Bowl. People wanted him fired. He wins a Super Bowl, and then, it's funny where I don't know where Nick kind of is on the pantheon of popularity, whether that matters or not, who knows. But with the fan base, I think that's still kind of out there, don't you?
Much like with Howie, yes, I feel like Nick's only as popular as his last game. Don't let the Eagles start off 1-2 next year and see, where people are at with Nick.
Right, absolutely. All right, Moshe, another football at 4 as the owners meetings. And by the way, we didn't go tush push today. We'll table that for the next time.
Yeah, let's table it for months, please.
May, when they talk about that at the next owners meetings in Minnesota. All right, Moshe, appreciate it, pal.
Take care. Thanks to the dogs.
Yes, thanks to the dogs. Football at 4 today, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast.